The views and opinions expressed on any program are those of the producers and/or the persons appearing on the program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of FRC Media, Bristol Community College, or the City of Fall River.
Well, hello. Welcome to Spindle City Straight Talk. I'm Chip.
And I'm CJ.
And it's Friday in the Rev, the end of the week again. So, I don't know. Let's start off with something right in your wheelhouse. The guru of campaign finance, CJ. Woman fined $5,000 for illegal donations to Fall River Mayor Jasiel F Correia's campaign.
Yeah, she allegedly would have family members and friends donate $1,000 to the mayor's campaign, and she would reimburse them. Her name is Dina Pichette, and you have the letter from OCPF.
Yes,
the resolution letter.
Yeah.
Now, the Office of Campaign and Political Finance says that they don't believe that the Correia campaign had any knowledge of this. I would say they would have to be blind to not know what was going on, but.
Well, you know the OCPF, they try everything they can not to do anything. You know, that's what they do best, you know, especially.
But you know, the interesting thing is this, with this whole situation. How did they find out that she was reimbursing people with checks? Somebody on the Correia campaign opened their mouth.
Yeah.
Somebody knew and turned him in. And I mean, he's got to start looking at the people that are surrounding him, because if they're going to turn him in at the drop of a hat, you know, the feds aren't going to be that hard to get evidence.
Well, you know what the thing that fascinates me is that I'm reading this, and we all knew, and we spoke about it a few years ago, how Primacare, that basically every single employee, including the janitors, gave the maximum donation allowable at the time to the sitting mayor.
Right.
And we know that the janitors aren't going to give $500 to a mayor.
Exactly. Now it's $1,000.
So you're not going to tell me they weren't reimbursed and this wasn't a con job for Primacare to grease the wheels? We all knew that, but where was the investigation on that? And what did they find? As I said, you know, this stuff goes on. Unfortunately, politicians, you know, you can buy their influence, you can buy them. You know, the majority of politicians have price tags. What is the primary duty of a congressman? They are required to raise funds for their party. They're not there to help you to fix your health care. They're not there to fix the problems of the United States. They're there to keep their power, their party, and themselves in power and elected, so they can stick their head up to their shoulders into the trough.
True.
So, you know, that's the reality. You know, this campaign finance thing, and, you know, I mean, McCain was about, you know, these contributions that, you know, this is the thing that screws politics up. And, you know, it's not anything new. As I said, the untold story of labor, one of my favorite books in the world, because and Fall River cited in it 3 or 4 times.
And it's still only available in a book form.
Yeah, it's still only available because it's so old. But you can get, I believe you can get it online, and whatever that thing you go on to buy old books and DVRs and whatever. I don't do that stuff much, but I've had that book since it was written. But you know, they talked about the millionaires. They interviewed the millionaires in the 1800s that said, we fundamentally, they said, look, we've got a Republican governor on the West Coast. We elected a Republican governor on the West Coast, the Democratic governor on the East Coast. We own all the congressmen. We don't care who sits in the Oval Office. We own them all. We are the rich, and we own this country. And you know something? And we'll never give up our power. And today, it's still the same. It is about money. And it may not be just about rich money, it's about everybody's money, because the Democratic Party panders to the poor people. We're going to help you, we're going to do this, send me $1, and look how many, and look at how much money Bernie Sanders raised.
Oh, I
Not
know.
from major contributors either, not from big business, but because they con the people into, everybody give me $5.
Yep, Joe the plumber.
Yeah, Joe the plumber. So, I mean, look, this is, and like you said he didn't know about it. Come on. When everybody in somebody's family gives you the maximum donation, you can't figure that one out. Whoever's in charge of your campaign finances can't see beyond that. That's the ostrich approach to fundraising.
Right.
So,
And if you're interested in reading the decision, you can read it on the OCPF website, ocpf.us, and the decision number is CPF 18-116.
yep.
That
And-
shows you how busy OCPF's office is. They're already up to 116 decisions.
Yeah, yeah. And let's see, what else have we got here? The video appears showing Fall River police.
That's a really big story. Everybody has a position on it, and I'm really wondering, this is why we have such problems, though, with law enforcement, with fire, with being a public official, even with being a private citizen, because, I noticed today, people are posting videos of people who are running stoplights and yellow lights, and people who are stopping short. They're putting their license plate numbers out there. There are cameras everywhere, and when our officers have to look and see if there's a camera around before they do anything, I think that kind of impedes their ability to do their job a little bit. Not that I'm saying these officers were right in the way this video portrays them, but Sergeant Horse said it very clearly, that you have to know the situation in its entirety before you pass judgment. But everyone's already passing judgment on the police department. See, police brutality, da-da-da-da-da. But the father of this student turned around and said, look, my son's not a saint. That's why he's in that school.
Exactly right. That's the thing. He's in a resiliency school, which is a euphemism for where they put all the kids that are half a step away from reform school.
Right.
And the students in that school are behavioral problems to begin with.
Exactly.
And as you said, look, have there been abuses, police? Yeah. The guy that was running away and got shot, I don't know how many times in the back as he was running away.
Right.
But look, we don't know the situation, and like you said, there's a camera. You don't know what the student had. He could have, they could have worried about him having a weapon. There are a lot of issues, and the reality is, as you said, you can't really formulate an opinion on this until you know all the facts.
Right.
And the police department is right. They have to do a thorough investigation. But that's the problem with these things, as you said, with a video camera. You see the part of the video, and you interpret that video without all the facts. And then if they get the facts, and the facts are contrary to what certain people's opinions are, they immediately say that it's a cover-up. So you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. The problem is, if they do their due diligence, which I'm sure they will, and because many of these cases, not only in Fall River, but throughout the United States, have gone to court. People have been found innocent. They have been found guilty. So they need to do a thorough investigation and stand by their investigation. And that's what they do. The police department has a professional standards or internal affairs, whatever they refer to them. I think Fall River now calls it professional standards now. No longer internal affairs. But the reality is they have people that are dedicated to doing these types of investigations, and we have to allow them to do what they do. And Sergeant Hoare was right. You have to we got to know all the facts.
Right.
You've got to know all the facts. If you get a piece of a piece of video out of context, well, it's difficult. But that's the problem. Everybody is quick, especially in something like this. There's a big heightened sensitivity about police brutality and political correctness in today's society. This kind of reminds me of that series we were talking about before we went on the air, Red Line. You know,
Red line, yep.
Yeah, so that's about, something like this, and that's like an ode to political correctness. So if you people haven't seen it, you can watch it and make your own decision. But it is fundamentally something about interpretations and different perspectives. So, but then the next thing we're going to talk about, let's see.
First Fall River woman firefighter.
In line.
In line.
In line.
In line. That's the thing we got to make
In
clear,
line. That's
people.
and challenging we got the Fall River challenging the charter, but in line to be a firefighter. Let me make something clear. I know you were talking about Facebook breaking the glass ceiling, and there is a process to become a firefighter, and Stephanie Macedo is not the first. We have had female candidates before, and actually quite a while ago. Actually, Fire Chief Louis Shea's daughter was on a list to come on the job. But there were many reasons why we haven't had a female firefighter. Some of them chose not to take the job when it got to the 11th hour. Some of them could not pass the physical requirements. Some of them just didn't want to go to the academy, and she has to get through the academy. And I will tell you out of the gate, this is just a situation where we haven't had that many candidates attempt, but we have had candidates before, and for one reason or another, they didn't get to be firefighters. Now, you need to have a criteria to become a firefighter, and the reality is that your gender should not be an issue. Your gender, if she can perform the duties, if she can get through the physical fitness exam and get through the academy to do the proper evolutions and put up the ladders and drag the hose and get into the burn building and do what they've got to do to become a firefighter, well, she deserves to be a firefighter. But let's put it into context. Many, 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 many years ago, the Massachusetts courts threw out the old fitness exam. The old fitness exam, and they also threw out the written exam for police and fire because they said it was unfair to have a requirement to know anything about the fire department or police department before you got on. It was the department's job to teach you. Because the old exam you had a red book for the fire department and a blue book for the police department to study. And it wasn't anything, they didn't expect you to be a firefighter, an expert in firefighting. Fundamentally, what that book was to give you a working knowledge of the tools you were going to use. It's like requiring an apprentice carpenter to study a book so he can tell the difference between a hammer and a saw. But the court threw it out because this is Massachusetts. They said it was discriminatory, because certain groups couldn't pass the old test. They even went to the point of one year dropping the passing score from 70 to 35 during the affirmative action period. And also the physical fitness exam was completely changed. The old fitness exam required a tremendously, not tremendously, to get a top score, you had to be tremendously fit, but you had to be very fit to pass the exam at all. Not an unreasonable criteria for someone who wanted to be a police officer or a firefighter. Firefighting takes a tremendous amount of physical labor. You're dragging hose, which is very heavy. You're dragging it up 3 flights of stairs. You're not a firefighter in Eastham where they all have single-family houses. You're fighting fires in a city where you're dragging hose up to the 3rd floor or up into an attic. You're putting up 50-foot ladders, which are very, very heavy. You're climbing on roofs, you're chopping holes in roofs, you're pulling ceilings down, you're ripping walls down to get into fires that are in concealed spaces. It's a manually intensive job. It requires physical strength and fitness. And the old physical required that. But because virtually half the men and virtually, a very low percentage of women could pass it, what was their response? They threw the physical out and they replaced it with the new physical. The new physical is nowhere near. And there are still people that are failing it. But it doesn't require, at least in my opinion, the fitness level that you should have to be on that job. And then what happens? What's the result of that? Far more on-the-job injuries, because you have people there that are not really physically prepared to do that job. In firefighting, you have a lot of injuries anyway. I'll give you an example of one of the changes in that exam quickly. There was one evolution you had to do. You stood in a box about 10 feet from a ladder. You had to climb a 24-foot ladder up into a balcony, run across the balcony, pick up a 125-pound dummy, put it on your shoulder, come back to the ladder, get down the ladder, and bring that dummy and put it in a box. And he gave you about, 3.5 minutes was the maximum time. They replaced it with 3 steps, drag the dummy, not pick it up, across a platform, drag it down 3 steps on the other side, and drag it over to a box, and they gave you like 5.5 minutes to do it. And that's basically what happened. And you don't need anywhere near the fitness level you did then. And if everybody says, well, that sounds reasonable, well, guess what? If you're the 125-pound dummy somebody's trying to get out of a building, 5 minutes you're dead, and the person trying to drag you is dead. You're not getting out of the building. And that's the problem. That's the reality of that job. Because like I told somebody once about that, if you're on a 3rd floor bedroom about two breaths from dying, and a firefighter comes through that window with 60 or 80 pounds of equipment on their back, they better be able to pick you up, drag you to that window, and get you out. Because if you get somebody that is not physically fit, you're not getting out. And people are going to be going to your wake. So that's the reality. But look, I wish you luck. I have absolutely no gender bias. If anybody that can do that job should be able to do that job. And we have a lot of men on the fire departments throughout this state today that would have never qualified under the old exam. So, but that's just the nature of the beast. And you need fitness requirements for these jobs. And you pay in a different way. You pay because they're injured more often, and that's what happens. So now that we're on firefighters.
Well, what's interesting, one of the things that's interesting about this candidate, Stephanie Macedo, which is very interesting. She laughs when she thinks about how she got into the trade of roofing.
Yeah.
Her fiance's brother-in-law, who works for the fire department, Lieutenant Joshua Hetzler, contracting business, convinced her to give it a try. He said, look, you look like a tough chick. Do you want to go into roofing? I was the first girl on the crew. I kicked butt, said Macedo. Hetzler would be the first to urge Macedo to consider suiting up to fight fires. So it's interesting where she got her impetus to do this. Yeah,
well, I figured that when they said she was a roofer. So obviously she's a roofer. She's fit enough to do roofing's an extremely physically oriented, especially if they don't have the mechanical means to get there. If you're carrying shingles up a ladder all day and going up and down a ladder, and obviously, but I have to caution Mr. Hetzler about using words like chick.
I know.
Because in today when we see that other thing about they're going to ban handshakes because of sexual harassment. You got to kind of be careful, especially when you're a school committeeman, and firefighter. But look, good for him for encouraging her. As I said, look, it's got nothing to do with gender. It's got to do with ability to do the job. And there were a lot of people that I saw on the job that didn't belong on a job. And that was a fact. You know, and normally they go and run and hide in an office because they got political connections, and they spend their career and virtually never fight a fire. But, you know, if you can do the job, you know, look, if she's willing to do it, and she passes, she gets through that academy, good for her. Congratulations. And it's long overdue, but let's face the reality of that. It's not because the department went out trying to keep women off the job. There were women on the lists, and for one reason or another, they got to the 11th hour. And not only women, we had guys. I had somebody who I knew who was friendly with my son. Took the test, passed all the criteria, fairly smart kid, went into the academy, and after a week or two, he just quit. And he was doing well, and they tried to encourage him to stay. And he said, which I give him credit for, he said, look, I don't think I'm suited for this job. I don't want to be a firefighter. He wasn't in it just for the paycheck. He said, look, I don't want to, and he walked away. But there were women on the list before, but for whatever reason, some of them failed the physical fitness exam. Some of them didn't get a high enough mark to be on the list, high enough to get a chance at getting to the academy. So apparently, Stephanie did. So good for her. And if she's a roofer, well, I think she probably, you know, I'm sure, you know, physically she can do the job. Now, you know, once you get into a burn building and you begin to do, you know, see what you're doing. Some people can't, you know, once they get into they're claustrophobic, there are a lot of reasons. So when you get through that stuff, you deserve the credit for getting through it. And kudos to her if she does. But she's got 16 weeks now of a class to determine whether she truly, really wants to do the job. And if she does, and she gets through, she will, you know, she will be the first woman firefighter, you know, and I don't like the, you know, that glass ceiling thing, because it's been available to people for a very, very long time, and we have had other people on the list. So just as the clarification of that, there have been other female firefighter candidates. We just haven't had one that's gotten through the process that's required of everyone. So hopefully we find she gets through, and that will, you know, that will go a long way.
You know, and I think I think you made it pretty clear, but you know, not everyone gets through the academy. There are men who don't make it through the academy.
That's right.
So we're not saying that she shouldn't do it. She should do it. We're just saying she's got to finish this process now. And if she completes it, there'll be a significant change in the department and the way things are handled.
Yeah.
You know, some of the jokes won't be said anymore. Some of the behavior won't happen anymore. You know, you're gonna need separate changing rooms, separate lockers, all that other stuff. So it's gonna make a significant change to the department.
No, it is. But as you said, what always disturbed me about things is when they lower the standards. It disturbed me when they lowered the fitness standard, but that fitness is applied to men and women. So we're having men that are not as fit as they used to be under the old exam getting on. So she met all the criteria. But, you know, if they put a woman on a job and said, well, you don't have to drag hose, you don't have to drag it as far, you don't have to go up 3 flights of stairs, you don't have to go into the burn building, you don't have to do this, and then we're going to make you a firefighter. No. But, you know, if the rules apply to everybody, that's the way I feel. The rules apply to everybody. If she can do everything everybody else does, once you put on a helmet and a mask and a coat, you can't tell what she is.
Right. That's it.
Okay? Because we have, you know, I mean, you won't be able to tell. What she's going to be is somebody in turnout gear doing an evolution. And that's the way it should be.
Right.
That's the way it should be. It's got nothing to do with who she is. It's about, can she do the job? And that's a very, very, you know, it's the primary factor, because not only the men and women, or hopefully she's the first woman, not the people she's working with, the crew she's working with, whoever she goes in with, 2 in, 2 out, their life will be dependent on her, and her life will be dependent on them. And civilians who we have to rescue, and the property that we protect, it will be incumbent on her ability to do that job as a professional firefighter should do it. So if she gets through it and she gets it, then she is a firefighter. That's it. And
No question about it.
Forget about the female male.
Yeah.
She's a firefighter.
That's it, and no question about that. While we're speaking about firefighters, we brought it up briefly on our last show, but Fall River Firefighter challenging the charter rule that bars city workers from serving on school committee. First off, I don't like that headline because it does not bar anyone from serving on any elected official position.
That's correct.
That's the key here. Remember that. They're not barred from serving as an elected official. They have to decide whether they want to continue working as a firefighter, police officer, secretary, switchboard operator, teacher, whatever it may be, or do they want to serve in the elected office? They're not banning them from serving in an elected office. They can do that. And to prove that, Joshua Hetzler took out his nomination papers. Now, I can understand him where you shouldn't have to make a choice between your career and your elected office. And and as we know already, the Supreme Judicial Court ruled that people shouldn't have to choose between their pensions and serving as elected office. They can collect both. So it's going to be interesting to see how this pans out. But, we heard it during our trial that we should have taken this up long before the election process started, if you remember that. Mm-hmm. The judge said, what prevented you from doing this before the election?
Sorry, I'm having trouble.
And that's the key here. Now, he's waited 18 months to do this, to challenge this. He hasn't even filed in court yet. And I think that he's going to meet the same resistance from a judge in that, why didn't you do this earlier in the process? Because you knew this when you took office, that you wouldn't be able to serve another term. So I think that that's going to be an argument he's going to have to overcome. I really do.
Well, you will see, but as I said, the thing that disturbs me about this whole situation is, number one, we've had people who were in elected positions before and were allowed to keep their job under the old charter.
Right.
We have legislation that says you got to pick which salary, and I remember Mr. Veloza was on the city council, and he was a school teacher, and he kept his school salary, and he had to recuse himself from certain votes, obviously, because of ethical considerations and conflicts of interest. But the charter again. This is one of my major irritants.
No, is it really?
It's and I know it's yours too. This charter has been nothing but a total. You cannot exclude an entire group. And the thing is, look, you got this job. Mr. Hetzler became a firefighter in the same way that Stephanie Macedo was going to become. He took the test. He got through all the qualifications. He earned that job. He earned it. Nobody gave it to him. He took a test for that job. It wasn't a political appointment. He earned that job. He qualified for that job. He went to an academy and proved he could execute the physical parts of that job in addition to the mental by passing the test. So he's earned that position. Now to say he has to give up that position because he wants to be part of, be part of the government, not just be a voter, and exclude that. They could not do that to any other group. Why do public employees, they're discriminating. And that's why I said, everybody except Dan Robillard, who filed a minority opinion, everybody has anything to do to this charter should hang their head in shame.
Well, we're not hearing too much from any of the old charter commissioners. I mean, even Mike Mioza seems to have gone dark on, speaking about some of these issues. So it will definitely be interesting to see what happens. We won't be having a show on Monday. Chip is going to be indisposed, but we hopefully will be back on Wednesday. Have a great weekend. We'll see you then. Bye-bye.
Stay angry, everybody.